There is an island on Earth where the trees bleed. Cut into the bark, and dark red resin pours out. Thick, slow, almost alive. For centuries, the people who found this place had no explanation for it, so they invented one. They said it was the blood of dragons. This island sits in the middle of the Arabian Sea, closer to nothing than almost anywhere else inhabited on Earth. Over a third of its plants exist nowhere else on the planet. Not nearby, not on a neighboring island. Nowhere. Scientists understand a broad outline of how this place became what it is. But some of the deeper details, why so many species survived here so long, why isolation hit this particular island as hard, are still being actively studied. Ancient sailors who passed by it believed they found the lost continent of Atlantis. Others believed it was paradise itself. And somehow this place, this impossible ecosystem found nowhere else on the planet, has survived almost completely intact while the country that technically owns it has been torn apart by one of the worst wars on Earth. That's not a coincidence anyone can fully explain yet. So, what is actually going on out there? Socotra, the alien island time forgot. Before we get into it, if you're into investigations like this, hit that subscribe button. Every week, I'm digging into a new place that shouldn't exist the way it does. All right, let's get into it. To understand why Socotra is the way it is, you have to go back a lot further than human history. This is a small archipelago, 4 islands and a couple of rocky islets, sitting in the Arabian Sea, roughly 240 kilometers off the Horn of Africa, and about 350 kilometers south of the Arabian Peninsula. Politically, it belongs to Yemen. Geographically, it's actually closer to Somalia. That gap between what a place is governed by and what it actually is geographically and biologically, that's going to come up again and again in this story. Here's where it really starts. Around 20 million years ago, as the Gulf of Aden began opening and the tectonic plates beneath this region shifted, Socotra separated from the Arabian mainland and drifted into isolation. 20 million years cut off. Modern humans have existed for roughly 300,000 years. Our entire species, every war, every civilization, every book ever written, fits into less than 2% of the time this island has been completely sealed off from everywhere else. That's a long time for isolation to do its work. Researchers have a name for what happens when a population of plants or animals gets cut off like that. No new genes arriving, no outside competition. They call it island biogeography. And Socotra has become one of the most extreme case studies of it on the planet. Scientists have given it a nickname because of it, the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean. That explanation sounds clean enough. Isolation, time, evolution does the rest. That would make sense, except it doesn't fully add up. Plenty of islands on Earth have been isolated for millions of years. Plenty of islands sit just as far from a mainland. None of them look like this. Isolation explains part of the story. It doesn't explain all of it. And the first thing that makes that obvious is a tree that, by every normal rule of survival, shouldn't still be standing. This is the dragon blood tree. Scientific name, Dracaena cinnabari. And there is genuinely nothing else like it anywhere on Earth. Picture an umbrella. Turn upside down. Now make that umbrella out of thick, densely tangled branches, packed together so tightly they form a single solid canopy. Now imagine an entire hillside covered in them. Hundreds of identical, inverted, alien shapes spaced out across a landscape that already looks like nothing from this planet. From a distance, it doesn't read as a forest. It reads as something staged, something built. It wasn't built, but the shape isn't random either. That dense, flattened canopy creates deep shade beneath the tree, cooling the soil and dramatically reducing evaporation. And in the rare moments it rains here, the canopy's shape acts almost like a funnel, channeling whatever precious water falls straight down toward the tree's own root system, instead of letting it scatter and disappear into the dry ground. In one of the driest, harshest environments on the planet, that design is the difference between surviving and not. Now, the blood, cut into the bark of a dragon blood tree, and it doesn't ooze sap the color you'd expect. It bleeds a deep dark red, almost the exact shade of dried blood. Locals call it Dam El Lackawain, blood of the two brothers. The name comes from old local legend involving a fight between siblings, one version of a story that's been retold differently across generations. For over 1,000 years, people who had no scientific explanation for this assumed the obvious one. This was dragon's blood, literally. Ancient Greek and Roman traders used a resin as pigment, as varnish, in medicine, treating wounds, digestive problems, respiratory illness. Arab merchants carried across entire trade networks stretching from East Africa to the Mediterranean. Some of these trees alive today are estimated to be hundreds of years old. Scientists actually refer to them as living fossils. This is where the story should hit a wall. This tree exists in exactly one place on the entire planet. No backup population. No related species growing on the mainland just a few hundred kilometers away. Over 20 million years, there should have been countless chances for something to wipe out a species that's geographically trapped. A bad drought, a disease, a single catastrophic century. And yet it's still here. That's a question researchers are still actively working through. And the dragon blood tree isn't even the strangest thing growing on this island. It's just the one everyone notices first. Researchers have documented around 825 distinct plant species across the Socotra archipelago. Of those, roughly 37%, more than 1 in 3, exist nowhere else on the planet. Take the desert rose. On the African and Arabian mainland, it grows as a fairly ordinary-looking shrub, nothing remarkable. On Socotra, an isolated subspecies of the exact same plant has evolved into something that barely looks related, a swollen, bulbous trunk, sometimes shaped almost like a bottle with delicate pink blossoms growing out of what looks like a stone. Same species, same DNA roots, completely different outcome. There's also the cucumber tree. And yes, it's exactly what it sounds like. An actual tree with a swollen trunk that looks unmistakably, almost comically, like a giant cucumber, found absolutely nowhere else on the planet. It's not just plants, either. Over 90% of the island's reptile species are endemic. Over 90% of its land snail species, too. Researchers have cataloged around 11 bird species found nowhere else on Earth but here. Here's the part that should genuinely stop you. This level of endemism, this complete break from the rest of the world's biology, usually takes enormous physical distance to produce. The kind of distance you'd expect to cross an entire ocean. Socotra sits roughly 240 kilometers from the African coast. That's closer to Africa than New York is to Washington, D.C. And somehow, across that relatively short stretch of water, an entire branch of the evolutionary tree grew up almost completely on its own. Different reptiles, different snails, different birds, different plants, down to the cellular level. Distance alone may not fully explain a divide that's sharp over a gap that's small. Researchers believe distance is only part of the explanation. Something about the way this specific stretch of ocean and current has behaved for millions of years may have sealed this island off more effectively than its actual distance from the mainland would suggest. Exactly why it's still an active area of research. Researchers studying island isolation often compare Socotra directly to the Galapagos. But there's a difference between the two that matters here. The Galapagos sit a few hundred kilometers off South America, and new genetic material, birds, seeds carried by storms, still arrives there with some regularity, even now. Socotra has had almost none of that for 20 million years straight. Spring is when all of this becomes visible at once. Seasonal rains transform a landscape almost overnight. Dry, almost lunar-looking mountains and canyons turn vivid green, and entire hillsides of desert rose bloom in waves of bright pink. It's no wonder ancient sailors who passed through here had a hard time believing what they were looking at. Some of them concluded they'd found the lost continent of Atlantis. Others assumed they'd stumbled directly into paradise. When you actually look at photographs of this place, that reaction starts making a lot more sense. But there's a bigger question sitting underneath all of this. An ecosystem this specific, this narrowly adapted to one tiny patch of land, should be one of the easiest things on Earth to wipe out. So why didn't it disappear millions of years ago? To even start answering that, you have to look at who actually found this place, because it turns out almost nobody left it alone. Here's something that doesn't fit the story you'd expect. You assume an island is biologically isolated, would also be historically isolated, cut off from civilization the same way it was cut off from the rest of evolution. It wasn't. Limestone caves scattered across Socotra have been used as shelters since people first arrived here, thousands of years ago. And remarkably, some of those exact same caves are still being used by locals today for almost exactly the same purposes. That's not an exhibit behind glass. That's a living tradition, unbroken, for thousands of years, on an island most of the world has never heard of. And this island wasn't some forgotten dead end. For most of recorded history, it sat directly along major trade routes through the Indian Ocean. Ancient Egyptians knew this island specifically as a source of frankincense, of aloe, and of that famous dragon's blood resin. So did the Greeks. So did the Romans. Civilizations on opposite ends of the ancient world, separated by thousands of kilometers and centuries of history, were all independently aware of this one specific island, all independently trading for the exact same resources coming off of it. That trade exposure brought outside religion and culture here too, layer after layer. Early Christian communities were established on Socotra long before Islam eventually became, and remains today, the dominant religion across the archipelago. Purposes. So here's the contradiction sitting at the center of this island's entire history. Biologically, Socotra has been almost completely sealed off from the rest of the world for 20 million years. Historically, it's been connected to major trade networks, multiple ancient civilizations, and shifting waves of religion for thousands of years. The plants and animals stayed isolated. The people never did. Up to this point, everything in this story shares one common thread. Isolation. Isolation created the trees. Isolation created the animals. Isolation built an ecosystem found nowhere else on the planet. But we're about to reach the part of this story that isolation alone can't explain. Every culture that encountered Socotra seems to have walked away with the same instinct. This place couldn't just be an island. It had to mean something. Some ancient sailors believed Socotra was a fragment of the lost continent of Atlantis, a piece of some older, sunken world that had somehow survived above the waterline. There's no archaeological or geological evidence supporting that theory. To be clear, this is legend, not history. But it's worth asking why that specific legend kept attaching itself to this specific island across multiple cultures for centuries. There are also stories, again legend, not documented history, connecting Alexander the Great to Socotra suggesting he either visited the island himself or sent representatives here specifically to harvest its valuable resin and resources for his empire. Local Socotra folklore is layered with stories of genies inhabiting the island's caves and remote valleys, protective or dangerous spirits tied to specific places across the landscape, passed down through generations of oral tradition. Some old Arab and Greek accounts go even further, associating this island directly with paradise itself, tied to stories of the phoenix, of eternal bliss, of a garden untouched by the outside world's decay. None of these are historical facts. They're legends, and we're treating them as exactly that. But here's what's actually worth sitting with. Why does the same pattern keep repeating? Greek sailors, Arab traders, and local Socotra communities, separated by language, religion, geography, and centuries of time, all independently arrived at strikingly similar conclusions about this one island. Maybe it's simple. A landscape that's genuinely alien-looking just naturally generates myths in any culture, in any era, because the human mind reaches for a story when reality doesn't offer an easy explanation. Or maybe encountering true isolation, a place evolution forgot to update, triggers the same instinct in people no matter where or when they're from. Either way, the legends tell you something real, even if they aren't literally true. They tell you that for thousands of years, across wildly different civilizations, humans looked at this island and reached the exact same conclusion. This place doesn't belong to the rest of the world. And in a very different, very modern sense, that's turned out to be true again. Yemen, the country that officially governs Socotra, has spent close to a decade engulfed in one of the worst civil wars on the planet. It's widely considered one of the worst humanitarian crises happening anywhere in the world right now. Mainland Yemen has been devastated, infrastructure destroyed, millions displaced, famine and disease spreading largely unchecked. And Socotra, politically part of that exact same country, has largely been spared from that destruction entirely. This is where the story stops making sense on its own terms. Same nation, same government, at least on paper. Same conflict that's tore apart everything else within its borders. So why has this one island mostly stayed standing? Part of the answer is the same force that shaped this island's biology in the first place. Distance. Socotra is physically remote enough and strategically peripheral enough that it simply hasn't been a primary battleground in Yemen's broader civil war. That explanation holds up until you look at what's been happening here more recently. In recent years, the United Arab Emirates has taken an increasingly visible role in and around Socotra, investing in infrastructure, expanding its presence, and effectively asserting significant influence over the island, separate from Yemen's internationally recognized government on the mainland. That's created real friction. Yemen's government has voiced concerns over what it sees as encroachment on its own sovereign territory. Regional analysts have pointed to Socotra's strategic location, sitting near vital Indian Ocean shipping lanes, as a serious reason multiple outside powers have taken interest in who actually controls this island going forward. Which leads to an uncomfortable conclusion. This island didn't escape the war by accident alone. It escaped direct destruction, while quietly becoming a low-key prize that multiple outside powers have real reason to want some level control over. Local life, for now, mostly continues. There are stories of Socotran children still playing in a natural waterhole on the island, said by local lore to have been formed by a meteorite strike centuries ago. Goat herding, fishing, frankincense harvesting. The rhythms of daily life here have largely continued, even while the rest of the country has fallen apart. But conservation groups and researchers working on the island have been clear about one thing. Even without bombs reaching Socotra directly, Yemen's broader instability has made consistent environmental protection here significantly harder. Funding gets disrupted. International access becomes complicated. Scientific monitoring that should happen every year sometimes simply doesn't. So the island exists right now in a strange, fragile in-between state. Physically spared from a war that's devastated almost everything around it, but politically tangled, strategically valuable, and quietly contested by a country falling apart and by outside powers circling in. That's not the same thing as being safe. Step away from the politics for a moment, because even setting aside the war, Socotra is still full of questions researchers haven't fully answered. Scientists are still working to fully map exactly how Socotra's unique ocean currents, sitting at the convergence point of multiple distinct marine biogeographical zones, have shaped a surprisingly rich underwater ecosystem surrounding the island. There's also an open question researchers genuinely don't have a clean answer to yet. An ecosystem that's specialized, is narrowly adapted to one specific island's conditions, should theoretically be extremely vulnerable to any sudden environmental shift. 20 million years is a long time. Climates have swung dramatically in that window. Sea levels have risen and fallen. So why has it survived all of that without collapsing before now? This is where it's worth pausing on a number most people skim right past. Researchers studying some of Socotra's endemic lineages estimate they remain genetically isolated for tens of millions of years, among the longest documented periods of continuous evolutionary isolation for any island ecosystem on Earth. Not just isolated, continuously isolated. No interruptions, no genetic mixing, events resetting the clock. That's the detail that should actually stop you. This isn't just an unusual island. It may be running one of the longest unbroken evolutionary experiments scientists have documented anywhere on the planet. Still going right now in real time, while almost nobody outside a small group of researchers is paying attention to it. One leading theory researchers point to explain how it's lasted this long is that Socotra's extreme topographic diversity, combining coastal plains, limestone plateaus, and rugged mountain ranges all within a relatively small landmass, may have given many of its species multiple different microenvironments to retreat into whenever broader conditions shifted. Built-in backup options baked into the island's own geography. That's a theory, not a confirmed answer. What's not in question is the urgency now attached to studying it. The dragon blood tree currently occupies only around 5% of the total habitat it could theoretically grow in across the island. Researchers project that drier future conditions, driven by climate change, could shrink that already tiny range by close to another half by the year 2080. That's within the lifetime of children being born on this island right now. One local resident, walking researchers through what used to be dense dragon blood forest, gestured toward just 3 lonely trees standing in an otherwise empty stretch of hillside. "In front of us are the ruins of a vast forest of dragon blood trees," he told them. That's not a warning about some hypothetical future collapse. That's a description of something that has already happened within living memory on this exact island. And here's the thing worth sitting with before we move on. Every expedition to Socotra still adds new pieces to this puzzle. Researchers continue finding species on this island that haven't been formally documented before, even now, even after more than a century of study. Which means this story isn't actually finished. Whatever scientists think they fully understand about Socotra today, there's a real chance some of it gets rewritten by whatever gets discovered here next. The scientific question and the political question end up converging on the exact same point. Can one of the longest documented evolutionary lineages on Earth survive a century where almost nothing around it is staying stable? Nobody studying this island right now can promise you the answer is yes. Socotra was officially designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 2008. Formal international recognition of what scientists already knew. This island holds, in UNESCO's own language, outstanding universal value. That designation has helped. It's drawn global scientific attention, international conservation funding, and a level of protective status that wouldn't exist otherwise. But a UNESCO designation is a piece of paper. It doesn't stop a drought. It doesn't stop a civil war. It doesn't by itself stop outside powers from quietly competing over a strategically valuable island. Tourism here has grown slowly over recent years. Travelers drawn specifically by the island's reputation as one of the strangest, most alien-looking landscapes on Earth. That tourism brings income and arguably more global attention and accountability for protecting the island long-term. It also brings foot traffic, development pressure, and outside influence to an ecosystem that spent 20 million years evolving with almost none of that. Every solution here seems to come with its own complication attached. That's the position Socotra is actually in right now. Not destroyed, not safe, existing in a fragile, narrow window where isolation has protected it just long enough for the rest of the world to finally notice, right as that same isolation is becoming harder to maintain. Around 20 million years ago, as the Gulf of Aden opened beneath this region, a small piece of land separated from everything else on Earth and drifted into open ocean alone. Left undisturbed for that length of time, among the longest continuous isolation periods documented anywhere on the planet, evolution didn't just continue here. It wandered somewhere completely its own. Trees that bleed red, plants shaped like bottles, like nothing else growing anywhere on this planet. An entire ecosystem built in near total isolation, answerable to nothing and no one but itself. Ancient civilizations who stumbled onto it couldn't explain it either, so they reached for dragons, for Atlantis, for paradise itself. And in a strange, modern echo of that same isolation, this island has spent the last decade surviving almost untouched, while the country that technically governs has been torn apart by one of the worst wars on the planet. Distance built this place. Distance may be the only reason it's still here. But distance has never been permanent. Not for the species evolving here. Not for the civilizations that found it. And not for the politics quietly closing in on it right now. Socotra has spent 20 million years showing the world exactly what happens when something is left completely alone. The real question, the one nobody can answer yet, is what happens to a place like this once the rest of the world finally decides to stop leaving it alone? And once you start asking that question about Socotra, it's hard not to start wondering how many other places like it are out there right now, quietly isolated, quietly surviving, and quietly running out of time. If you like this one, make sure you're subscribed. New investigations, new places that shouldn't exist every single week. Like it, comment, share it. It genuinely helps.